Geraldine Stringfield Wilson, church mother of Bethel United Holy Church. 1955, I was still living in Buffalo. Back then we were colored people, you know, and limited where we could go, what we could do. Those are the things I remember.
Yes, ma'am.
Living in North Carolina where I was born, I mean, there were water fountains that said white only. Others said colored. So, you know, we were just limited in a lot of things we could do or participate in during that era.
Emmanuel Council, trustee, Bethel United Holy Church, Holman Avenue in Trenton, New Jersey.
So you grew up in Trenton, you grew up in the Northeast, and a lot of our members who fall into your age category grew up down south. Do you remember how different it was during the Jim Crow era, growing up here rather than down south?
I couldn't tell you nothing about that. I'm not up to date on the history of, of Jim Crow. I've never seen no signs like that, black and white bathrooms and stuff. I guess I was too young. My father and my mother probably could tell me that, because around their ages, they seen stuff like that. But me, I never seen nothing like that. Sometimes, you find people that just don't like you, trying to make life a little hard for you.
Fred King, minister, Bethel United Holy Church. I was born in 1938. I'm 83 years old. Well, Jim Crow was the law of the land. One law was separate but equal in terms of schooling. If you're going to be talking about the boycott, the law was that blacks were to sit from the rear of the bus. That wasn't the only reason that we were marginalized. It developed a system whereby blacks were last to be hired and first to be fired on a job. And because we didn't have the opportunity to, as some people says, come up with your bootstraps. We didn't have boots, or we didn't have straps. We had nothing. We had nothing. We had to make do with what we had.
Most people see Jim Crow as a set of laws. It's not just a legislative account or an assault on the different names that they called us: colored, Negroes, adopted for ourselves, Afro-American, and then of course African-American, Black American. But these laws or the practices was not just laws, but it was a way that our oppressors wanted to portray us as in an unfavorable light, unintelligent, unworthy of respect and acceptance. And so how we were recognized, how we were portrayed. They wanted the other community or the world to see us as clowns. And if you would look at some of the postcards, memorabilia, and advertisements that used Black faces, oftentimes they were not Black people, but they portrayed Blacks as buffoons, don't know anything, can't be trusted, lazy. And one that we are familiar with, at least in this era, is Aunt Jemima. And she was not the original pictures on the pancake boxes, were not as appealing as the ones that you see in the 21st century. If you go even further than that with the entertainment, we were not portrayed as serious entertainers. We were like the court jesters Amos and Andy, I don't know if you are familiar with Amos and Andy, or Stephen Fletcher. It was always an inferior or not human. So as I was saying, Jim Crow was not just a group of laws to keep us separate. It was practices that showed us as unworthy. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The New Jim Crow, and that's still going on. And the Michelle Alexander portrayed in that book how the justice system, how the from schoolhouse to jailhouse route of African Americans, and we just saw every day we see Jim Crow played out, not so much as laws, because those laws are off the books. Even the separation laws are off the books, but there is still de facto segregation and intimidation. And those are the things that I see that just, it bothers me that sometimes we as Blacks don't recognize that it's all over again.
My name is Benny Williams, and I'm 80 years old. I am a trustee at Bethel United Holy Church, 221 Holman Avenue, Trenton, New Jersey.
You mentioned your grandfather, and of course, your grandmother, correct me if I'm wrong, is the founder
Of this church. I started in my mother's front room, and I don't know who was there because I was a couple of years old or whatever, and Virginia was the baby. And my mother was home in Virginia. And I knew there, and I remember some of the early Bethels that me and Manuel went to. I remember when we had a pastor and she went to Africa, Sister Hargrave. That was on Union, close to Market. Then we moved from there down to where my mother was at Water Edge.
Yes.
Okay, still on Union Street, not far from where you live at.
Yes, sir.
That was Bethel. Because I remember me and Manuel was on the way to church one Sunday. We're walking down there, and Manuel looks over in the grass and found a gun. I never forget it. I see it right now. It's been years and years ago. He gave it to his mother, and she put it in her purse. I don't know what she did with it.
Right.
Not really, really. I remember we went to Sunday school and all that, and we had the little Sunday school cards we used to give us. I remember we had a lot of revivals there. My mother and they lived on Rose Street. That's before Virginia got married. What they would do, most everybody in Bethel did that. When you leave in the morning, you cook that meal the night before. You have it in your pots. And you bring all this stuff in. They had the kitchen downstairs. Everybody shared with each other. You warm up that food after a certain service. You warm up that food. A little hour break in between. Go back to service. You wasn't getting out of church until about 11 o'clock that night before you came back home. That's why Deacon Warren's sister, his brother, told him that, man, you don't want to be messing with them people over there. And they put pots and pans in the car, and they leave, and they'll come back at about 12 o'clock at night.
Well, my oldest brother was married to, their name was Young, last name was Young. My oldest brother married their oldest sister, Mildred Young. And after service, my oldest brother settled in Buffalo because he had gone up that way to visit my aunt and uncle. So he had met Mildred, you know, and so they ended up getting married, and he ended up settling in Buffalo. And being so young, they asked my father if I could come and live with them, which my father consented. So that's how I was 10 years old, and they came and got me, moved me to Buffalo. Mildred's family bought a house 2 doors down from my brother. They had a large family. I think it was 7 girls and 4 boys. And anyway, they belonged to the Church of God in Christ, so I started going to church with them. and I got saved at a very young age, 11. And they weren't singing then because, you know, we were all young then. But Mildred had a piano and was a pianist. So she taught me chords and, you know, which was really great because I always loved the piano. Then, I don't know if you have heard of Evangelist Doris Page, Lockett Page.
Yes, ma'am.
She was very renowned evangelist. Well, she was one of the young sisters, and she's the one that started us singing and called it the Young Sisters. And since they had sort of like adopted me into the family, I was like a sister. In fact, I think I stayed at their house more than I did my brother's house. But we started singing at church. Back then they had choir anniversaries, and they would ask us to sing. And there was a funeral director who had a gospel program every Sunday night, and he asked us to sing on that program a few times. And then we'd be invited to certain churches, you know, in the city. And their parents said they wanted to take us to Memphis and one year. And they did that. All of them didn't go because one of the sisters was married, raising children. Another sister was a few years younger than me. So it was like, I think it was 4 or 5 of us that went. It was so many, we had to carry a little, when you're a little girl, you got a table set with, we had to put one of those chairs in the back. And because I was the youngest, and Jeanette, the other sister, was next to me, older, a couple years older, we had to take turns sitting in that little chair all the way to Memphis from Buffalo, packed in that car. And when we, as we traveled, I'd say we were impacted by racism, places we couldn't stop, couldn't eat, we couldn't stay. Back then, they sent representatives to different homes to see if you could house a few people that were coming. That's how they housed us. We stayed in private homes, but they would always make sure it was a home that could house all of us girls together. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful memory. I have so many good memories. When we sang in churches, I was always bashful, and I would be so nervous. When we went to Memphis, they asked us to sing. Well, Mason Temple seats 4,000 people, and it was packed that night. I could not believe that I got up there and sang, and I wasn't nervous. And I kept pondering, why wasn't I nervous then? And I'm so nervous at a little churches. And then I thought, well, I felt like nobody was looking at me, you know. And but we really, really enjoyed. It was just wonderful memories I have of those days that I'll never forget. And sometimes I reminisce. Back then they had 3 and 4 week revivals, and we would walk. If the church was in walking distance, we would all walk there, walk home, attend every night. Sometime I'd be in school waiting for night to come so we could go to the revival. We just really enjoyed church so much, and we had so much fun, and I'll never forget those days.
Fred came in and said, we're going on alert. And he never went on alert, but we're going on alert. And don't leave the house. I was devastated, but I didn't feel the impact of certain people that were in the South. But what really got to me was the rioting that took place in the North. And I remember the burning in Trenton and in Newark, and in certain areas in Newark today have not yet recovered. And I'm sure in other cities too. came to my mind that so people are retaliating against the burning, but I don't know. And I didn't feel fearful, but I was wondering, what do we do? Where do we go from here? But I noticed we didn't go to Trenton for several days after this because there were lots of things going on in Trenton. His mantra was, "It's not me, it's us." And he prepared people. His speeches were always not about himself, but how do we go about making things better.
I couldn't believe it at first. And then right after it happened, I said, well, everything's gonna break loose now. And this man's been holding everything together. And everything broke loose. See, I was in New York when he got killed, assassinated. I was in New York when Malcolm X got assassinated. I was in New York when JFK, I was in New York when his brother got assassinated. And I know I'd never forget the picture of Malcolm X in the paper the next day. I don't know if he was dead already or what, but I saw the expression on his face of pain where they shot him because, see, he had preached black only, this and that he went to Mecca, that he saw the black and the white Muslim worship together. He came back. When he came back, Elijah Muhammad, he broke away from him, started his own movement. He was getting too big. And like him and Martin Luther King was very good friends. Because he made a statement when JFK got assassinated, that the chickens finally came home to roost. And later on, like he said, when he saw that there, he knew the teaching of Elijah Muhammad was the wrong thing. I knew it was going to break loose because this man was holding the people together, nonviolence. Now, can you imagine if he would have went the other way?
When Barack became president, I thought I'd never see a black president. And I was thrilled to. But again, all that Martin Luther King did and all that people did in terms of changing laws, all they did was change laws. As a Christian, you have to change people's hearts. People's hearts were not changed today that Barack became president. Well, the only way you can change hearts of people is people to accept Christ. And he can change hearts. He changed my heart. I grew up to hate white people. And everything, all my dealings with white people had a tint of us against them. And I always felt that they were trying to put me back into slavery, and I hated them. When I got saved, it took some time, took some working, but I have come to love white people, to love everybody. And it's my religious, my Christian background, my Christian growing, that's what my father taught me, and to love one another, yes.
Barack Obama become president, and I said, really, I don't think the country is ready for a black president or a woman president. When he beat Hillary out, but when he got elected, I might be wrong, he had some merit, but I believe that he was put in there because the country was so messed up that the Republicans didn't really want it. And I believe that the Republicans, what's called campaign was sabotaged by the woman from Alaska that they put in there. They knew this woman was an outspoken woman and she was going to mess up things. But I think she was put in there on purpose to keep that vote down on the candidate for the Republicans. After he came in there and with his class, and he showed what he knows, because he was a very intelligent man, his wife too, and he was slow to anger. I don't think I've ever seen him blow up on TV or anything. I think the man was brilliant, really. And that's what Donald Trump's problem was with him. He was too brilliant, he did too much, and people were too into him as far as a president. Now, like Donald Trump tried to say that he had as many people as he did to his inauguration. He did not. No, you just look out there and see that. But I know he did as far as I'm concerned, an excellent job.
Yes, sir.
I definitely don't think it was the fulfillment of the struggle, because that struggle has not been eradicated as we speak. I think that it was an event that lets us know that we can progress. And he was just the face on that progress. Martin Luther King was the face on the progress during his time. So he was the face. He was the poster child, more or less. But we couldn't expect him to make a change that would be totally and radical. We have, as a people, have to take on responsibility for our changes as well. And I don't mean to victimize us. I refuse to be a victim. I refuse to think like a victim. But neither do I look back at our history in nostalgia, because it was not, we did not have what we needed. But if we look at some of the older people and some of the people that we never hear about in the news, no one has ever written a book about them. But these were the resilient people in our culture. No matter what you threw at them, they always came through. And I must say this, if I may, that is because of our dependent on the God we serve.
First of all, live for the Lord and do what you can to help promote fairness in our country. If you can't participate in, marches, which I never did, I was not a marcher, but my former church would take offerings for Dr. King. And so I think it would be good to do what we can do to help promote the rights of all people.
Yes, ma'am.
No matter what race or color. And but first and foremost, live for the Lord.
But only thing I can say, if you're determined, you most likely you'll succeed. If you can't take no opposition and abuse, if you can't deal with stuff like that, close the book, you ain't going nowhere. There was a lady named Mother Peyton years ago. She used to testify that she had a bulldog hold on God. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what she meant. One day I seen a bulldog and a German shepherd fighting, and the shepherd was eating the bulldog up, little teeny dog. And I said, my goodness, I said, what kind of spirit is this? So what kind of, was the dog eating him alive? We let him go and he's fighting again. I said, oh, I see what Mother Peyton was talking about. She said she had a bulldog hold on God. See, the only thing that could stop him was death. Something up in the future, you were trying to get to a certain goal. Ain't too many people gonna help you. If you're determined, you get there. You can run into a lot of obstacles, but if you really genuinely determined, you keep plowing through till you get there.
Number one, if you don't know Jesus Christ and the forgiveness of your sins, it's not going to profit you anything. Like my favorite scripture, what does it profit of a man if he should gain the whole world, lose his own soul? What should a man give in exchange for his soul? Now, I don't care if you lived 1,000 years. At the end of that 1,000 years, you're going to end up in hell if you don't know Jesus. There's no A, B, and C. It's just A or B. Either you know Jesus or you don't know him.
What do I have for the young people today? Well, as a Christian, we have to put the Lord first in our lives. And if we put him first, as I think someone has already said, seek the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not into your own understanding. And he will direct your path. And that's the kind of attitude that we have to have. And of course, today, I think that many people feel that they have entitlement. And so my advice is to young people today is to give your hearts to the Lord and not to let the things that you see affect you to the extent that you won't do the best for yourself and for the world in general.
Believe in yourself and don't let anyone take you from the better parts of life. And I think that's one of the weapons that our enemies have placed against us, is making us feel that we are not good enough. We are good enough because we have been wonderfully and fearfully made. And we have a purpose, and that purpose goes beyond just where we are at the time. But that purpose, especially in the church, that purpose is to see that others see God's hand in our lives. We can't do Black history without looking at the importance of our faith. Put Christ in culture, even though there are many people who want to remove it, and some want to dilute it, and some want to pollute it. Our faith, it's a spiritual warfare as well as a cultural warfare.